Hello and welcome to this week's crypto update. So what's been happening in the macro and how does it affect crypto? Well, today, unusually, I'm actually going to start with the charts. And bear in mind, I'm not a chartist, but here's what we've been looking at over the last few weeks. Let me just take you to the Bitcoin chart first of all. If you look at the Bitcoin chart here, this is the daily. You can see, since went up here in August and went to all-time highs, I actually put in this box here because I felt it needed to come back to that area before it could take off to potentially all new highs from there. And it did. It dipped in there quite quickly towards the end of the month, but the start of September. But since then, it rebounded quite strongly off it. Up it went, but we can see it's come back down into the box again. So what needs to happen from here? Well, if we just zoom in a little bit and we'll go to the 4-hour chart, you can see in this that again, it came down into the box. It rebounded quite strongly off 107, went back up, has come back down, and is back in there again. Provided the 107 holds strong, which is the bottom of this box, then it's likely that we see this climb back up to 113, 114, where it would have a solid footing and positioning itself from to move into all-time highs towards throughout the last quarter. I think that is the base case and the thing that's most likely to happen. If it were to break that 107, then there's significant potential risk to come right down here to the sort of the 98k, 100k mark. Not my base case. I don't think that's the most likely thing to happen unless there's significant negative macro news. But other than that, I think it probably will hold the 107, jump from there, get back up to the 113, 14, lots of support levels there, and position itself for a move into the future. If we look at Ethereum is slightly different. Again, when it was, if I go to here, you can see again in the middle of August, when it was up hitting towards all-time highs, again, I put in this box. You'll have seen it in the last few weekly updates. I did feel a need to come back down into this box again, to position itself to go up further from there. And unlike Bitcoin, it didn't come back in there initially. It actually held very strongly. And you can see here, it held very strongly above the box, went up, came back down, and again, fought it very hard over the last few days. But once it went in, it went straight through, which for me would be quite a worrying sign. If we go into the 4-hour there, you can see here, again, it fought it hard before going in there, but not just went in, but went right through it. It's looking to try and regain that right now. Very important for Ethereum and indeed altcoins that it does regain back into the box. And if Bitcoin can hold the 107, this is likely to hold here. And again, if Bitcoin can move back up to the 113, 114, I can see this going back up to 4,300, find its level and prepare for the next upside. But of course, again, like Bitcoin, if Bitcoin comes below the 107 in a strong way, then there's a lot of potential downside risk for Ethereum as low as 3,000 or less. But again, not my base case. Unless there's very significant negative macro news, I think it's going to hold and move on from there in preparation for what I believe would be a very strong altcoin season in the last quarter of this year. So back to the update. Where does that leave us? Well, again, if the macro news stays fairly neutral or positive towards crypto, then I think crypto has a huge potential to go into a really strong bull market cycle towards the end of this year. There's so many factors within crypto that are building up almost in preparation for that. October, November, December are usually some of the best months of the year for Bitcoin and altcoins. Both for the stock market and for crypto. Of course, we're in rate cutting cycle. We've had a 25 basis rate cut. Many people are, almost putting it as a certainty that in the next meeting there's going to be another 25% rate cut. And so people might ask, well, then how come we've had this pullback? If all the news is so positive, why is that happening? Well, some people will put it down to the fact that large institutions and hedge fund managers, they tend to reallocate towards the end of a quarter. And of course, we're coming out to the end of a quarter, which can often lead to sell-offs. They might do it for tax reasons and so on, reposition their portfolio at the end of the quarter. And then when they move into the start of the next quarter, which of course is coming in a week's time, then they start to reallocate again. I believe there's a big chance that's exactly what's happening here. Now, the other thing I would say is I think everybody was expecting a 25% rate cut. And what they were really watching the Fed announcement for was it going to be pretty certain that there would be two more before the end of the year and more beyond? And Powell put enough doubt in people's mind that maybe that mightn't be the case, that I think the market has weakened a little bit off the back of that as well. However, they are now, most of the market is putting it in almost, it's over 90% certainty that there will be a 25 basis rate cut in the next meeting, and we'll see after that. And so I do think we will see the market move from there. Again, all on the assumption that there isn't some serious negative macro news, but winning crypto, it's all positive. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's have a look. Here we just see on stablecoins. Just 2 weeks ago, the stablecoin supply was 246 billion. Today, 251. So it's climbing rapidly. That's a 5 billion jump in only 14 days and a brand new record high. So it's all-time high for stablecoins. Since January 1st, the supply has grown by 66 billion. So that's a massive move up. It's nearly an extra third on top since the start of the year. With that, why does that matter? Of course, stablecoins aren't just parking cash. They're ammo. Billions in fresh capital already on chain, locked and loaded. In other words, they've put it on there ready to go, okay, what am I going to buy and when am I going to buy it? And history is clear. Stablecoin growth doesn't follow bull markets. It fuels them. In other words, is the bull market over? We don't think so. It's likely just getting positioned now. We have a pullback. It's an opportunity if you believe the market's going to really push on. Other news within stablecoins, Tether is looking to raise up to 20 billion, bringing its valuation to 500 billion. The talk of deal are in early stages and prospective investors have been given access to the data room over the past few weeks. It's believed this is happening. Just to put that into perspective, Tether is a private company, and if you put it up against other private companies, i.e. banks, this would make it the second biggest bank in the world, ahead of Bank of America, just behind JP Morgan Chase. That's incredible for a company that's only around about 10 years versus the banks that are around over 100. So, it just goes to show stablecoins are the key. And we're seeing stablecoins just grow more and more rapidly. It's highly likely in advance of a really strong altcoin season. What else is happening? Arthur Hayes forecasts 3.4 billion Bitcoin bet for 2028. So he's saying Bitcoin will be worth 3.4 billion by 2028. That's a significant figure, and it's a long way up from here. Maelstrom Hayes forecasts Bitcoin gaining an anticipated $1 trillion liquidation flow amidst increasing treasury issuance. There's a whole bigger story and video to be done there, which I am going to do around, what are the treasuries telling us, what are the bonds telling us, what's gold telling us, and what's likely to happen from here, all the while the Fed is likely to be reducing interest rates quite strongly. And on other news, just looking at ETH and the amount of that staked. So staked ETH just keeps climbing. Today, there's over 35 million, nearly 36 million ETH is locked away. That's another 1.72 million ETH this year alone. So it's climbing rapidly. That's roughly over 7 billion at today's prices that has been added to the staking. And the kicker, that pile now represents almost 30% of the Ethereum's entire circulating supply. Why is that important? Well, almost 1/3 of all Ethereum is effectively gone from the open market, stashed by long-term holders who aren't planning on selling anytime soon. This isn't a blip, it's a supply crunch playing out in real time. And when demand collides with shrinking float, history says price doesn't just move, it rips. So again, there's huge amounts, and I could spend an hour here telling you all the different things that are lining up within the crypto world that's lining up to suggest that this is going to be, an unbelievable bull rally. But again, it all depends on what happens in the macro, because that can have an effect, and a very major effect. So if all stays stable, it doesn't even have to get any more positive, but if it stays stable and we see the likes of the rate cuts that are expected, all the while the jobs market stays somewhat stable and inflation doesn't increase too much, which I don't think it's going to, then there is the potential for us to go on an absolutely, ripping all-time biggest altcoin cycle that we've ever seen. That potential is definitely lining up here. It's not guaranteed, but it's definitely lined up. And of course, there will be fluctuations as we go along. As an example, there's huge opportunities out there right now. If you truly believe that crypto is going to run, whether it's going to run next month or over the next 12 months, well then, when the market pulls back like it just has, that's an opportunity. And if you look at the projects that we've done a few videos on now, like the top layer ones like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, etc., and you look at the discounts they're offering right now. If you look at it, Bitcoin dropped about 6% in the last 7 days. Ethereum about double that, about 12%. Solana about 20%. These are huge discounts on the top major cryptocurrencies. If you go the risk curve from there. And if you're looking into that area, and we did a video on dexes, many of those dexes now, really strong, good projects, are down 15, 20, and even 25%. The lending platforms, a little bit further out the risk curve, are down 20, 25% and more. So if you believe in those projects and you believe in the overall crypto cycle, then they're huge opportunities to take positions into really strong projects. And if you're further out the risk curve, you know, there's 40 to 50% off some of those. So huge opportunity, provided you understand the project, you've done your research on them, and you believe in them, and you believe in the overall cycle. And if that's all in place, now's a really good buying opportunity. But that is up to you, your impression of what's going to happen next. We've given you ours, and we hope you found that useful, and we'll talk to you all on the next one.